What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from the Quartering, and there's been a really strong push, at least I think. I keep my finger on this, on the pulse of kind of YouTube, the YouTube economy. I've always been a strong supporter of new tech, like Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey, even Kick now. And, it's just because I think competition is good. It's the only way you get a better product for the end user, for the most part, when single companies are allowed to have too much control, too much of a monopolistic grab on the space. There's no real incentive to improve. There's no incentive to innovate. There's only incentive to protect, which is, what I think has long been the case in terms of YouTube and Twitch. This, kind of the streaming and home and like VOD headquarters. Twitch for streaming, YouTube for, clips, VODs, standalone videos. But there's been kind of something brewing in the comedy space. And Danny here, I know Polachuk, I'm going to mispronounce his last name. He told me how to say it when I met him. I'm sure I got it wrong. Has been going through a lot of stuff. And also Tim Dillon has been going through a lot of stuff with YouTube censorship, YouTube age restricting stuff, YouTube, at the core, I'll tell you what the real problem is. But what also is happening is I think YouTube has been ramping up their baselines for acceptable content in the last couple of weeks. I don't know particularly why. I sometimes they go through these, I've been YouTubing for more than 10 years and I've seen a lot. There's a couple times a year where things just kind of go wild and, videos are tanking, monetization's all over the place. It's a couple times a year YouTube does this. I was sure we were going to see more kind of like lockdown leading up to the election, which I suspect we will, which is also why I suspect Rumble and Kick will have huge gains during the 2024 political season in terms of usership. And you see Tim Dillon writes, after YouTube has made people sign in to watch the show for the third time, I've decided to start uploading the podcast to Twitter and Rumble as well. I don't think YouTube is the future of comedy. The censors have already gone completely insane. As somebody who is a supporter of, alternative content options like like Rumble, Kick, BitChute, Odyssey, and really Twitter, it's right now it's kind of a race of who can get to the monetization, who can solve the monetization next, right? So YouTube, in my opinion, has had an effective monopoly on kind of standalone video because they also are owned by Google AdSense, which is what allows creators to earn a living. Now, there's a lot of people that'll say, well, who cares about that? Well, people have bills to pay. Once you get a little bit bigger, you can do sponsored ad reads. You can, start your own coffee company. You can do whatever. You have a lot more options. But as you're growing and getting going, monetization is another huge moat that has to be overcome by any new possible replacement or alternative. And what's interesting with Tim Dillon is, this guy's pretty edgy, but I don't think in a conspiratorial way or, anything like that. You've probably seen him on Joe Rogan a bunch of times. But you see, YouTube just is not responding. You see here June 25th. This is yesterday. This has now been age restricted by YouTube. That's so dumb. And people will say, hey, well, you've got to post it to Twitter. You got to post all the other places. Yes, I agree. But it's also worth reporting, with Tim Dillon uploading to Rumble now, I think that's great. I can't believe he wasn't until now. And I know this is I'm not saying this about Tim specifically, but a lot of creators, especially like mid-tier creators who are, I don't mean that like the quality, but they're just getting established. What they won't tell you is that they don't want to post to Rumble or BitChute or Odyssey because they don't pay enough, if anything, really. Odyssey had some weird way to earn money for a while. BitChute doesn't. You can advertise, you can put banners and stuff like that. But a lot of creators, YouTube revenue is still 90% of my ad revenue, my business's total revenue. And no matter how often I tell people go buy Coffee Brand Coffee, YouTube revenue is still very important. And, because I've been at this a long time, I can afford to lose some views to new tech. But, if everybody switched over to Rumble tomorrow, it would be a catastrophic event for my business until Rumble gets advertising going, which I know they're working on. Once Rumble gets advertising going, it'll be a really, really strong competitor to YouTube. Anyway, Tim Dillion says this has been age restricted by YouTube, so dumb. And I don't know, what in this particular video it was about, the Titan sub, things like of that nature. But, this continues to happen. And when you get age restricted, that means they have to sign in. That means they have to have an account. It's a huge drain on the
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to
the reach of the show. You see, it says 218,000 views.
Relate show.
If you see, he normally gets 380, 400. Here's from 4 weeks ago, 1 million views. So, it cut his views in half, I would say, is probably fair to say. And maybe it'll get more because he's, anytime a show will get canceled or whatever, or censored, it usually helps push them through. But this is not the first time. If you look at Danny, there's nothing in this clip. I'm like afraid to play it because there's nothing in this clip. So this was just a few days ago. Danny said, "Hey, Team YouTube, I got a strike and have my channel demonetized because you said this clip from my comedy podcast glorifies, criminals." This was a pretty big news story, and 1 million other YouTubers covered this. Please retweet to help get their attention. Well, they responded to this and said, "Tough cookies." Like, Team YouTube upheld this. And I talked to Danny about, what he should do and what I think he should do. It was like a pretty lighthearted take about, when Kaczynski passed. They were talking about, there was just like a cat. They basically said like, rip Ted as like a joke. And somebody went and struck down that video, and now he couldn't stream for a whole week. It was a clear, obvious error. But the problem is, look, I don't know in particular what, offshore country they're using to review these. I assume it's India, but that would be kind of a biased assumption. But it could be, any number of places. I've been told by people on the inside what the review process looks like, and maybe they're wrong. But how I've understood the review process always going is they get 10 to 15 seconds. So I'm guessing a video will get, there's some AI detection of some potentially spicy things. It gets sent to someone whose first language isn't even English. Then they listen to that 15-second clip and decide whether or not to destroy your life. And while that may be hyperbolic, but if you're trying to pay your rent, through your podcast or through your show, things like that, trying to sell merch, and you can't work for a week, it's an unpaid week off. It's a huge punishment. For somebody like me who uploads 4 or 5 videos a day, it would be a massive financial hit. Massive. Lose 25% of my revenue for the month. Because someone in some other country who doesn't have the time or cultural context to understand nuance and understand context, they just press strike. Now, obviously, I feel like it would be so much easier to err on the side of, oh, hey, maybe, please provide context, or maybe even just, demonetizing a section of a video, or there's a lot of other options, but like, why did I say video? Like video, bruh? But they don't do that because the problem is, part of it is that YouTube is so huge that the scale of like what it would actually take to have somebody review this with, understand local comedy. Obviously, a joke about Ted isn't going to be as funny, overseas or whatever. It may not translate in Japan, for example, or even be seen as offensive. But there's additional context to the joke that they made. I don't think they were glorifying the man. And by the way, like, it's an obvious joke. It's a comedy show. And so Danny, I told Danny, I was like, dude, you've got to, you've got to get involved in Rumble. You've got to get involved in Kick. Any platform that will have you. And, but when it happens, most people are panicked because suddenly they can't work and they can't reach their viewers. You can't even do community posts when you get a strike. So you got to rely on everyone else following you every other place. So, the future of comedy on YouTube is definitely in doubt. I think that places like Rumble will be a better option. They just did another UI update today that looks pretty good. They're always working on that. And they've got to figure out monetization. Obviously, Twitter's good too, but there's no way to like search for videos in any real functional manner on Twitter. Twitter is yes, Twitter is a place you can go upload a full uncut version of the Flash movie and not get taken down, but there's no real way, reliable way to search for videos. There's no good way to organize them. There's no good way to, there's a lot. Plus, there's no advertisers to, generate backend for them. So Twitter's got a long way to go. I think they're starting out with the right core tenet by erring on the side of not banning people. And I think, YouTube, look, we already got Tim Dillon and Danny Polachek moving over to Rumble, or at least co-posting their stuff there. That's a huge start. I hope that they'll tell their comedian friends and everyone else about it. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave a like on it, and we'll talk to you again real soon.